convictions. From the flip side, Ronald Reagan raised taxes when the deficit got too big. George W. Bush supported TARP and the auto bailout when he thought we might have faced a Great Depression, second Great Depression. Does that, examples like that tell you that good, effective leaders need to show the kind of flexibility that Governor Romney has showed on some issues?
The next president of the United States needs to send a powerful message, not just to the people of this country, but around the world, that America is going to be America again, that we are not going to pick winners and losers from Washington, D.C., that we're going to trust the capital markets and the private sector to make the decisions and let the consumers pick winners and losers. And it doesn't make any difference whether it's Wall Street or whether it's some corporate entity or whether it's some European country. If you are too big to fail, you are too big.
Speaker Gingrich, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke has called unemployment in this country a national crisis due to the amount of days people are out, months that people are out of work, and the number of people out of work. Many of you have come up with tax reform plans. Why is tax reform the path to job creation? And if it's not the only path, what else can you implement to get people back to work?
Well, first of all, I think Ben Bernanke is a large part of the problem and ought to be fired as rapidly as possible. The Federal Reserve ought to be audited, and we should have all the decision documents for 2008, 9, and 10 so we can understand who he bailed out, why he bailed them out, who he did not bail out, and why he did not bail them out. So I'm glad that Ben Bernanke recognizes some of the wreckage his policies have led to. The reason we follow, I think most of us, are for tax policies that lead to jobs is because we've had two cycles in my lifetime, Ronald Reagan and the Contract with America, both of which had the same policy. Lower taxes, less regulation, more American energy, and have faith in the American job creator as distinct from a Saul Alinsky radicalism of higher taxes, bigger bureaucracy with more regulations, no American energy, as the president announced again today in his decision on offshore, and finally, class warfare. So I would say that all of us on this stage represent a dramatically greater likelihood of getting to a paycheck and leaving behind food stamps than does Barack Obama.
Congressman Bachmann, same question to you. How can you create jobs as quickly as possible?
Well, I think one thing that we know is that taxes lead to jobs leaving the country. All you need to know is that we have the second highest corporate tax rate in the world. And if you go back to 1981 and you look around the world, we had a lot of high corporate tax countries. It was 47% on average on a lot of countries across the world. But if you look today in the United States, we have an effective rate, if you average in state taxes with federal taxes, of about 40%. But the world took a clue, because capital is mobile, and capital went to places where corporate tax rates went to 25% and falling. We're still stuck in a 1986 era of about a 40% tax rate. We have to lower the tax rate because it's a cost of doing business, but we have to do so much more than that. Our biggest problem right now is our regulatory burden. The biggest regulatory problem we have is Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. I will repeal those bills. I've written those bills. To repeal those bills, they've got to go. But beyond that, we have to legalize American energy. And here's something else that we have to do that will help the economy. We have to build the fence on America's southern border and get a grip on dealing with our immigration problem.
Okay.
Senator Santorum, you've proposed a zero tax on manufacturing businesses.
I have.
I understand the sentiment behind that. In the state of Michigan's lost hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs over the last few decades. Isn't that the kind of distortion in the tax code that people want to get away from in order to get rates down? Flatter, simpler, fairer.
I think getting a rate down to zero is pretty far down. That's good.
But it's down for the manufacturing industry as opposed to people doing other things. Isn't that picking winners and losers?
It's down for a sector of the economy, not picking an individual winner or loser. It's down for an entire sector of the economy that we're getting our hat handed to us by losing jobs. We see that here in Michigan. We see it across this country. And the reason is government has made us uncompetitive. We need to compete on taxes. We need to compete on regulations. We need to repeal Obamacare. We need to, I've said I'm going to repeal every single Obama-era regulation that costs businesses over $100 million. We'll repeal them all. We'll send a very clear message out to manufacturers in this country and all over the world that America will compete. Some have suggested we need to go into a trade war with China and have tariffs. That just taxes you. I don't want to tax you. I want to create an atmosphere where businesses and manufacturers can be profitable. Lower taxes, repatriating funds, 0% tax if you repatriate those funds and invest them in plant and equipment. And then, of course, an energy policy that everyone on this stage is going to agree with that says we are going to produce energy in this country. I'm different than many of them, that I'm going to cut all the subsidies out and let the market work as opposed to creating incentives for different forms of energy that the government supports.
You have all said that you will repeal the president's health care legislation. We will get into that because we want to know then what. What is the plan once you repeal Obamacare? But first, Mr. Cain, the American people want jobs, but they also want leadership. They want character in a president. In recent days, we have learned that 4 different women have accused you of inappropriate behavior. Here we're focusing on character and on judgment. You've been a CEO.
Yes.
You know that shareholders are reluctant to hire a CEO where there are character issues. Why should the American people hire a president if they feel there are character issues?
The American people deserve better than someone being tried in the court of public opinion based on unfounded accusations. That's what that's about. And I value my character and my integrity more than anything else. And for every one person that comes forward with a false accusation, there are thousands who would say none of that sort of activity ever came from Herman Cain. You're right. This country is looking for leadership. And this is why a lot of people, despite what has happened over the last 9 days, are still very enthusiastic behind my candidacy. Over the last 9 days, the voters have voted with their dollars, and they'll say they don't care about the character assassination. They care about leadership and getting this economy growing and all of the other problems we face.
Governor Romney, when you were at Bain Capital, you purchased a lot of companies. You could fire the CEO and the management team, or you could keep them. Would you keep a CEO? Are you persuaded by what Mr. Cain has said? Would you keep him on if you had bought his company?
Look, Herman Cain is the person to respond to these questions. He just did. The people in this room and across the country can make their own assessment. I'm not going to tell you the truth.
Governor Huntsman, let me switch back to the economy. Many Republicans have criticized the Occupy Wall Street movement. But we had an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll this week that showed a large proportion of the American people, 76%, said they believe there's something wrong with our economy that tilts toward the wealthy at the expense of others. Do you consider something wrong with the structure of our economy and the income inequality that it produces? Is that something government should do something about, and if so, what?
Let me just say that I want to be the president of the 99%. I also want to be the president of the 1%. This nation is divided, and it's painful, and it is unnatural for the most optimistic blue sky people this world has ever known. We are problem solvers. When I hear out the people who were part of the Wall Street protest, I think, thank goodness we have the ability to speak out. I might not agree with everything they say. I don't like the anti-capitalism messages. But I do agree that this country is never again going to bail out corporations. I do agree. Thank you. I do agree that we have blown through trillions and trillions of dollars with nothing to show on the balance sheet but debt, and no uplift in our ability to compete, and no addressing our level of unemployment. And I do agree that we have institutions, banks, that are too big to fail in this country. And until we address that problem, we can fix taxes, we can fix the regulatory environment, we can move toward energy independence. So long as we have banks that are too big to fail, we are setting ourselves up for long-term disaster and failure.
So, Governor, you agree with Governor Romney that the bailout that Governor Snyder supports in Michigan was a mistake?
The bailout here in the auto sector, $68 billion worth. We're going to end up footing a bill, Governor Snyder knows that, of probably $15 billion when all is said and done. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer money. Instead, there ought to be some way of taking the auto sector through some sort of reorganization, get them back on their feet. The people in this country are sick and tired of seeing taxpayer dollars go toward bailouts, and we're not going to have it anymore in this country.
Governor Romney, do you believe public companies have any social responsibility to create jobs? Or do you believe, as Nobel laureate Milton Friedman, the most important, most influential conservative economist of the 20th century, held, that corporations should exist solely to create maximum profit for their shareholders?
This is a wonderful philosophical debate, but you know what? We don't have to decide between the two because they go together. Our Democratic friends think that when a corporation is profitable, that's a bad thing. I remember asking some, where do you think profits go? When you hear that a company's profitable, where do you think it goes? And they said, well, to pay the executives, their big bonuses. I said, no, actually, none of it goes to pay the executives. Profit is what's left over after they've all been paid. What happens with profit is that you can grow the business. You can expand it. You add working capital and you hire people. The right thing for America is to have profitable enterprises that can hire people. I want to make American businesses successful and thrive. What we have in Washington today is a president and an administration that doesn't like business, that somehow thinks they want jobs, but they don't like businesses. Look, I want to see our businesses thrive and grow and expand and be profitable. I want to see more hiring. I like jobs.
Governor Carter, 30 seconds to you. Do you think that companies can both be profitable and be able to create jobs? Do you think it's a dichotomy? Do you think they can do it?
They better be, and that's the reason the tax plan that I laid out, a 20% flat tax on the personal side and a 20% corporate tax rate, that will get people working in this country. We need to go out there and stick a big old flag in the middle of America that says, open for business again.
Mr. Speaker, how about to you? Can corporations do both?
Sure. Look, obviously, corporations can and should do both. And what is amazing to me is the inability of much of our academic world, much of our news media, and most of the people on Occupy Wall Street to have a clue about history. In this town, Henry Ford started as an Edison Electric supervisor who went home at night and built his first car in the garage. Now, was he in the 99% or the 1%? Bill Gates drops out of college to found Microsoft. Is he in the 1% or the 99%? Historically, this is the richest country in the history of the world because corporations succeed in creating both profits and jobs, and it's sad that the news media doesn't report accurately how the economy works.
What is the media reporting inaccurately about the economy?
What?
What is the media reporting inaccurately about the economy?
I love humor disguised as a question. That's terrific. I have yet to hear a single reporter ask a single Occupy Wall Street person a single rational question about the economy that would lead them to say, for example, who's going to pay for the park you're occupying if there are no businesses making a profit?
Senator Santorum, I want to talk about a high-quality problem our country has. I just came back from North Dakota. We have made the largest oil discovery in a generation there. Not only is it a big step toward creating energy independence. It stands to create as many as 300,000 jobs. But what the guys tell me up there is that they can't handle the rush without federal help. Would you favor incentives to get workers and businesses to where the jobs are to support this boom?
No, because we've done it in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has Marcellus Shale. It took a while for us to ramp up, but we're drilling 3,000 to 4,000 wells. The price of natural gas, because of Marcellus